What are some tips that you could give to a small business owner that maybe has a small team that's struggling with sales?
Understand what it is that you're doing that's interesting, different, or unique, and who that appeals to. And I would say most people that are not doing well at sales, that are struggling at sales, are just like little toddlers throwing mud at the wall and seeing what sticks and where it runs down. And so, really getting underneath that and saying, what do we do?
Hello, and welcome to Small Business Pivots. I'm your host, Michael Morrison, a small business coach who helps guide small businesses from struggle to success. On our podcast, we explore the stories, strategies, and pivots that small business owners have made to build successful businesses doing $1 million and more in annual revenue. Our guest today is Shannon Gregg. Shannon has a PhD and an MBA. Dr. Shannon Gregg is no stranger to the needs of a growing company to identify efficient and effective sales processes in order to drive revenue as quickly as possible. She's hyper-focused on improving sales productivity and optimization and is known for her ability to hone in on areas to improve with a lean approach and her charismatic candor. Dr. Gregg is the president of Cloud Adoption Solutions, a sales process and Salesforce.com consulting practice, and she also provides keynote talks, consulting, and workshops on sales productivity. Her popular book, It's About Time, is available now and is being used by sales teams across the country to refocus on what's really important to drive revenue and results. She also instructs the professional selling course at Point Park University. Shannon delights sales teams, sales management, and executive sponsors with her ability to improve sales to drive results. Let's get to Shannon now and learn the pivots she made to build a very successful business by helping others build their business with proven sales formulas. How are you today?
I am awesome. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. So tell us a little bit about your business right now, where you're at.
Sure. So we specialize in mid-market businesses. So businesses that have sort of gone through that startup phase, who are now looking for repetitive motions and the ability to capture information in CRM systems and helping them to get their team to adopt the CRM system. So essentially looking for people who are saying, how do I capture sales opportunities and sales activities and do it in a way that my team actually wants to do it and not the way that they feel like I'm big brothering them.
Yeah, that's important. I know a lot of business owners who will buy into something, but then they can't get their team to buy in. So that's very important, and I look forward to learning more about that in the show. But if you were to kind of tweet your business and life right now, or maybe a few words, what does that look like today?
Well, in the very amazing words of Outcast, I would probably just tweet a quote that says, I catch a beat running like Randy Moss. I think that
Oh,
lyric
wow.
is so cool. I'm always looking for patterns or indications. This is where the market is going. So I can predict that before my customers see it coming. So I can tell them, here's what you should be, here's what should be keeping you up at night, not waiting for them to ask me, hey, where am I at? So
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a new one. I haven't heard anything put quite like that. So that's very intriguing. So we know that as business owners, we know it hasn't always been that way. And I know that a lot of business owners that approach us, they've had maybe a trial or tribulation in their life growing up, or maybe a mindset that's blocking them from success. What was your childhood like, or was it just fantastic?
My childhood was interesting because my grandfather was an entrepreneur, and then my dad, who worked for the company that my grandfather sold to a giant private equity firm, left that really nice, comfortable place and became an entrepreneur. And so when I decided to get into the business world, I said, there is no way I'm going to be an entrepreneur because I can
Never
see
say
what
never, right?
exactly. There would be so many times that my dad would be on a business trip. I mean, he traveled a lot, and you know what it's like. The hustle is there. And I said, I'll never do that. And you're talking to me today. I did exactly that. Left my really nice corporate job to become an entrepreneur.
Wow. Wow. So any insecurities, self-doubts, anything like that? I know for me that I had a lot, and I find a lot of business owners have that. And sometimes that's all that's holding us back. How about you?
I think so. I think a lot of times it's really frightening to say, should I take this leap of faith, or I have an idea, but what if, and I think those what ifs are the things that get in everybody's way. Some people describe it as imposter syndrome, and
Mm,
and we've been there a lot, right? Like I
yeah.
I did go to school for English literature. And so a lot of times I think,
Huh.
right. How are people going to take me seriously? I read a lot of James Joyce. How does that translate to business? So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that gets stuck in my head. I'm a little nerdy reader, and how does that make me great at business? And that's that little voice I have to tell, like, you go away.
Well, that's important that you read. I always say learn to earn, and that's one of my favorite quotes. So you have some letters after your name, PhD. Where is that from?
So I got my PhD fairly late in life, honestly, and from Point Park University. They have a degree called community engagement, which was multidisciplinary. And I read a meme one time that said, all a PhD is asking a question so many times until you get mad enough at it to try to figure out a little bit more. And I was doing a ton of research on why don't the salespeople that I work with want to use Salesforce? Why don't they like it? And at some point, I thought, if I'm doing all this work, I might as well do it in a way where I lay all out all of my findings so that other people can read and benefit from it. And that's where that PhD came from.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's really cool. So sales is important, right? So without sales, you don't get cash or revenue, and that's what drives a business. So you got into the business of entrepreneurship. What was that like getting in, dipping your toe in the water for the first time?
Wild,
Huh.
absolutely wild. I think about a hairdresser. If somebody comes to a hairdresser and says, I want something that's really not in style, like a spiral perm. And what do you do when you're that hairdresser? Do you guide that person and say, this is going to damage your hair? It's going to, make
Yeah.
it frizzy. It's going to make it break. And so when I first started doing consulting around sales process, which really is underlying sales technology, telling small business owners, number one, you have to be the best salesperson in your business. You can't hire some superstar salesperson because they're not going to have the passion, drive, and need that you do for the business to succeed. Was really challenging. Like telling somebody, I know you think you look good in a perm, but you don't.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so,
Well, that's already a nugget there because a lot of business owners have this mindset of, I need more sales, so I'll just hire someone to do it. And then they fail and they can't figure out why. And it's usually because they haven't figured it out themselves about
right.
their business. And like you said, that's a nugget right there. You're the most passionate about your business. You should be able to sell it in your sleep.
Right, right. It is. And I think so many people rely on that idea. I've got a great idea. This is a market fit. Even if they've sort of tested it out and said, I know that there's room for my business here, they then become apprehensive about selling it. And I've never seen a business where somebody can sell it better than the founder.
Excellent advice for all small business owners. So you said it was wild. So the purpose of our show is to kind of share some pivots that we've made along the way that might help someone else consider trying those pivots. Not every pivot works the same for every business. So it was wild at first. What was kind of that jumping point? Because I know for most business owners, we say, oh, I feel like I finally have a real business. So what were some of those moves that you made that kind of took you to that next level? And then we'll keep talking about your company.
I think probably for us, the most critical realization was in order to get bigger, we had to think smaller. And this
Ooh,
is going to sound counterintuitive,
yeah.
but we had to niche down our ICP, so our ideal client profile.
Hmm.
So instead of saying we can provide Salesforce consulting to everybody, we had to say specifically, in order for people to gain trust and say, oh, you really understand what my problems are, we had to really narrow down who we were focusing on. So instead of looking across multiple industries, we really narrowed down on industries who have data regulatory requirements. So looking at life sciences, looking at wealth management in particular, helped us to say, not just we can do something really great for everybody, but we can do something great for people that look exactly like this, which helped us to narrow down our prospects, helped us to get better case studies, and helped us to say with repetitive motion, we're already 30% into the discovery call before we have it because we understand the industry so well.
Wow, that's a nugget right there, because I know as a small business owner, well, I started my business over 2 decades ago. And I know at first I wanted to help everybody. I was just a yes person, but I didn't get very much business because nobody knew who I served and how I
Right.
could help them. And, for us, just adding the word, one of my good friends on LinkedIn, she said, have you ever considered narrowing down business coach? And I said, what do you mean? She said, who do you serve? And so I told her, and she said, if you just put the word small business coach in
Mhm.
there, that will be more relatable to your ideal target. And I did. And it's like you said, it's like now people get it. Corporations don't call me because I don't work with them, but now there's a um, relationship with small business owners, because now they feel like I'm of their size, if you will. So that's very important. So you kind of niche. Do you say niche or niche? I ask everybody that question. It's
You
a
know, I have a very, very strong belief that you only say data. You never say data
ah,
because
yes.
datum is there.
Okay,
But for
cool.
niche, I think I'd probably just say whatever you say. So if the
Okay.
person,
Well, I asked
if the
because you said
person
you were English, and so I was like, I want to get from the expert how you say that word, because I say both, but I do say data. So I owned a marketing company at one point and we sold it, and I always said data. And when people said data, I'm like, ooh, give me. But niche and niche are two different things. That's an ongoing, never resolved issue, I think. So
I'm sorry, I didn't add any clarity to you, didn't
no, and I was wanting a firm answer from an English major. So okay, so you niche down and got small as far as your ideal client. What happened next? Any additional pivots that you made?
Well, I think the other thing that we made a really nice pivot was at the beginning, we said, all right, we're going to sell through a partner system. So Salesforce has a really nice ecosystem of attached applications and integrations. And it just made sense to say to partners, what is it that you need that we can provide uniquely? And that became really challenging for us because we found that we were listening to a lot of client requirements through hearsay, which is not great,
Yeah.
because people are only telling you what they heard and how they interpreted it. And it also made things much more challenging in terms of project management. So you're really managing two customers. You're managing the person that you actually signed the contract with and the person that they signed a contract with.
Mhm.
So I think that's something I see a lot of my clients doing too, where the idea of having sort of joint ventures or partnerships feels like you'll be able to spread yourself and multiply yourself way faster than you could do alone, but it adds an added layer of uncontrollability that for us just wasn't worth it. So, now we do still work with some partners, but our partner strategy is nowhere near as robust as it was at first.
That's interesting. So CRM. I know a lot of small business owners, believe it or not, still don't have one. Can you explain, since you're an expert in that area, can you explain kind of what that is and why a small business owner would need one if they don't have one? And then part B of that question is, if they have one, how to use it more effectively.
Yeah, so CRM, some people call client relationship management, some call customer relationship management. And the way that I think about it is if you think of contract signature as being a vertical line, CRM is all the activity that happens prior to contract signature. And then you have a system like ERP, maybe a QuickBooks, that happens after the contract signature. So capturing all of the activity that you have when you're reaching out to somebody is really critical so that you can say, hey, I haven't left somebody in the dust who maybe was a little bit interested. I'm making sure that I'm keeping up on a cadence so that my sales motions make sense. And also so that you can say, here's what's helpful. So I know if I reach out to somebody 5 times, they're more likely to become a customer than if I only reach out 3 times. And you can isolate those integers to say, this is what's been successful in my sales motion, so I can do more of that. Now, does that sound overwhelming to a small business owner? Yes, it does.
Yes.
And I would say Google Sheet is a CRM. Start with a rudimentary CRM. You don't have to start with the biggest, best thing. In fact, if you do that, you'll be so overwhelmed, you'll do none of it.
Yeah.
So start with something small that is version controlled, which is why I love Google Sheets, right? They're sort of always where you are. I don't use Microsoft, but I know that Microsoft's got a sort of like live version of Excel. So start there and prove your points out and say, okay, I do want to capture, these particular data points in my sales process. And then you're actually building out your requirements for a CRM. So if you move on to a HubSpot or a Zoho or a Salesforce, you then know what it is you want to capture without paying somebody a really expensive implementation fee before you know what you want.
Wow, that's very well said. So if someone already has a CRM and they're not utilizing it very well, what are some tips that you could give to them to actually use it to be effective?
Most of the time when we see people who have CRM and aren't using it well, it's one of two things. One, it's the executive posturing. So
Mm.
it's somebody saying, put everything that you do in this system so I can see everything you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's not a great way to get somebody to do
Right.
something.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking over my shoulder all the time. Okay.
Right, right. So if leadership says, hey, if you put everything in here, we'll be able to, I'll call you less, I'll Skype you, I'll Slack you,
Yeah.
I'll Teams you, I'll Zoom chat you less because I can see the things that you're doing, but I'll also be able to use my time to help you. So I'll be able to say, actually, I know somebody there, can I help you with that? Or I see that the pricing is an issue. Here's ways that we can approach that. So use it as a tool that actually helps the people that are doing the sales opportunity management instead of it being something that's punitive. And then the second is technically not asking them to do too much in it. So
Mm.
start small. We see so many companies that make every field required. And when
Oh,
every field is required, no field gets filled out.
you're
So,
right. Yeah.
allow it to be a place where people can go in and do what they need to do. And then as you start to build out the maturity in your organization, then you can make more fields required.
Excellent advice. And I want to throw this out there for small business owners that don't have a CRM yet. There's also a cool little platform that I ran across called Streak. And you can actually embed it if you use Gmail, and it actually like sits in your inbox, and it's very simple, easy to use. They have a free version, and start there. That's another one how you can track, and it actually it'll flag any emails that come from that you put into Streak. And so it's really a very simple entry gateway to get into the CRM. And then we can get into Salesforce, right? So tell
That's
us a little
right.
bit about Salesforce, because I know it's very robust and it's very intimidating for small business owners to even consider. But I want them to know that once they get their feet wet using a CRM and how powerful it can be for their business. And I don't see how a sales or a business can survive without one, to be honest with you. How many lost sales they lose because somebody says, I'm out of town this month, but call me next month. Who remembers that?
No one
So a
remembers that.
CRM is great for that.
That's exactly right. And, frankly, I think we see CRM being very helpful in turnover as well. So when you've got somebody in sales that leaves or you let go,
Mm.
letting somebody new come in and say, I can see we've got this field that's sort of already started to be tilled. I can get back in there and, continue to water the fields. That's really helpful with that as well. Salesforce has got something small for smaller businesses,
Okay.
Salesforce Essentials, that's sort of out of the box. You can open up and start using. They'll let you use it for a free trial, but I would continue to implore people, it is progress before perfection, because
Mm.
everyone sees the Salesforce demos and they hear 499 of the Fortune 500 use
Yeah.
Salesforce. And so they want to do everything all at once. And the reality is, when you start with those sort of small iterations and get quick wins, it will build trust in the system, it will build data quality in the system, and it will allow you to use it in the way that you really want to. And that feels like something most entrepreneurs or small business founders or
Mhm.
leaders don't want to do because they want it all at once.
Yeah. Well, I always
We're
tell.
here because we like speed, right?
Yeah, I always say go slow to go fast, though, because that's the only way you're going to make any headway at all. And I
So
know a lot of
true.
small business owners, they're like, they want to check boxes like, yep, check, done, got it, next, next. And it's like, no, everything you do in a small business is evolving. Like it's
So
a
true.
living, breathing document. You're always going to be returning and working on this one thing, because as your business change, that thing's going to change too. So just another little tip there for business owners. So pivots. any other pivots that you consider were instrumental in your success?
Yeah, I think another pivot that we had was looking at our delivery capture. So we are a services business. And so it's really critical for us to be able to prove the value of an hour, right? We need to be able to do that. And so we were tracking it in a system that was intended for, micro businesses. You have a team of 5 people. It was a really good system. And then we moved over to a system called Jira, which is part of the Atlassian suite. And Jira is actually free for up to 10 users. It's beautiful and it's so easy to use. And when you've got people that have to log time, I can guarantee you they don't enjoy it. Nobody likes logging their time, but the Jira makes it simple and easy. And it also makes it really easy to just quickly export and send it to your customer and say, here's what we spent time on, so that they can have that sort of insight into the work that you're doing for them, which is really, really helpful. So I wish we had started using Jira earlier. It felt and sounded to me like an enterprise platform. So I was scared of it and, didn't want to overload my team. But as soon as we did, wow, did it give us clarity and make our clients feel like they had more trust.
Now, what was the name of that again?
It's Jira, Jira.
Okay. Jira. Yeah, I have a few clients that are trying to find some software like that. So I hope they're listening. Because
I hope so too, because it's beautiful stuff.
They should be if they're a client, I hope. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so that was an important pivot. You're listening to Small Business Pivots, a podcast created for small business owners who are ready to take their business to the next level. For more small business advice, go to my webpage, michaeldmorrison.com. And while you're here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast. Let's get back to our guest. What would you say your business looks like 10 years from now?
In order to tell you what it looks like 10 years from now, I have to tell you, in June of 2021, I was diagnosed with colorectal cancer, which was a major surprise. I turned 45, and when you turn certain ages, they tell you now's the time to go get your preventative screening.
Yep.
And so I went right away, and I was their first ever 45-year-old. So the balloons were out, the music was playing. And when I woke up, the doctor looked at me and said, I can't believe I have to tell you this, but you've got a tumor. And I said, okay, well, let's get it out. Nobody was expecting this. I had no symptoms. I had no family history. But incidence is on the rise by about 300%. So I can't say they were fully surprised, and neither was I. So I said, let's move on that. And so during that year, I did continue to work through chemo and radiation and, a whole host of surgeries. And what that did was require my team to pick up things that I had been crowding them out of. So some of the things that I would do, hey, I'm the one that sets pricing. I'm the one that finalizes proposals. They had to get the autonomy to do that in order for the business to keep running. And it worked. And it worked well. And so, this team of people, we're just a 10-person organization, had the ability to do things that were at a level that I probably would not have let them in on for another 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And what it allowed us to do was step back and say, okay, now how do we take advantage of the things people want to do, stretch projects, which I thought were only for enterprises, and how do I allow people to continue to develop talents they didn't know they had? And what that did was allow me to look at my 5 and 10-year projection and say, you know what, instead of us just looking at a hierarchical structure as we continue to grow, and our business has nearly doubled every single year, is to be able to say, just because somebody has a title or somebody's sitting in a role doesn't mean that's the only place they want to be or the business will allow them to be. And so 5 and 10 years from now, that's one of the things I'm going to continue to encourage and manifest, which is go beyond what you think you're doing right now and look for these sort of stretch projects that will interest you or maybe lead you to say, now I know that's something I never want to do.
Yeah, right. Yeah, when a business owner asks us, where should I start on my business? I'll often tell them, take a week off. Don't go in the office. Don't answer your phone. Come back, and then you'll know what you need to work on.
Well, how frightening is that?
Yeah, right. Because most business owners, I haven't taken a vacation in 20 years, and they're true. They're telling the truth, most of them. So that's important. So I want to jump back because that reminded me. So most of us, when we start a business, we're a solopreneur. What was that first step that you took to bring somebody on board? How did you know who to bring on, or did you? And what does that look like? Because I know that's kind of scary to take on your first employee.
Super scary. It's
Yeah.
really scary. And I think a lot of times people think about bringing on somebody who's administrative to help take on the task they feel overwhelmed by. And I would say one of the ways that you can start to model that is to look at the tasks that you're doing that you can easily teach somebody else to do or aren't high value for yourself. So the first person that I brought onto payroll is a guy named Andrew who's still with my company today. He just had his
Wow.
4th anniversary. And believe it or not, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I read an article about you on Point Park University's website. And I looked you up and I looked at your website and I looked at your business website. And you seem like somebody I would just like to meet. And I really would like to work for you. Let's meet for coffee." And I thought, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah,
uh,
that is.
I didn't think I was at that place. I met him and I thought this ambition is definitely something I need to capture. And so I started doing just that, writing down the tasks that I thought somebody else could do and do better than I could do if they were really focused on it. Worked with him for a few months just to say, what are your thoughts on this? What if we made the position look like this? So the hiring process was very, very long for him, but he stayed in it. He kept staying interested and invested. And so I think one of the things that I learned from that was you can have a long interview process. And if somebody's really interested in what your company is doing and they like the idea of being on the ground floor and making important contributions, they'll hang in during that process. And if they don't, that's okay. So most of the people that we brought on, we've known for many months before we brought them onto payroll, which has been helpful in our relationship development and understanding how they fit into the organization.
Yeah, that's some good advice right there. Again, go slow to go fast. I see so many business owners, they just hire, and we call it putting cheeks in the seats. And then they have
Oh, that's great.
and then, a few years later down the road, they're running a daycare because they didn't take the time to quantify all that good stuff you're talking about. Take your
Right.
time, find the right person, know exactly what you want them to do so they know the expectations. You mentioned your website, that Andrew went to your website. Your website is awesome.
Oh, thanks.
What's the URL?
Cloudadoption.solutions.
Yes, it's very robust. I thought it was beautiful. So for listeners, you need to go check that out, learn more about Shannon's company and what she does, because it tells you very specific. So any other words of wisdom that you might have today?
Yeah, I think primarily one of the things that I think is really critical for small businesses, and I'm in a lot of I'm in a lot of coaching groups myself.
Yeah.
So I really advocate coaching. There is not a player out there that doesn't get coached, right? You've got people who are in major leagues who have coaches, multiple coaches. And so one of the things that I would say, one is always be open to being coachable, because if you're not coachable yourself, you can't expect your team to be as well. And if you surround yourself with a bunch of yes men who are afraid to tell you something you don't want to hear because you're responsible for them paying their mortgage,
Yeah.
that's not going to be great for your business. So get a coach, find a coach, at least one. I'm involved in a few groups, and one of the common threads that I see in my 2 most pervasive coaching groups is people don't take the time to set down the process before they add the people or technology on top of it. So instead of saying I have a problem, I'm going to throw a body at it, or I'm going to throw tech at it, step back and look at your process, because it follows that garbage in, garbage out rule. If you have a garbage process that's heavy and noisy and full of waste, if you apply people or technology to it, it's just going to amplify it. And now you're paying for it.
Wow. Yeah, that's solid advice. So as an advocate of business coaches, I have coaches myself. So I know that shocks some business owners, but I say that I don't know what I don't know. So there's business coaches that have been places I haven't been. So and most business coaches do have business coaches. In fact, that would be an answer or a question I would ask a prospective business coach. Do you have coaches yourself? That would be a qualifier for me. So
Totally agreed. And if they don't, run, right?
exactly.
none of us know everything, especially when things are changing, right? You and I had a conversation about how Threads launched yesterday and they had so many million signups yesterday. And 3 days ago, we were all perfectly fine on Twitter. So,
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't think of it like that. Yeah. We were all fine, right? We had adapted to, okay, this is the new normal. And now it got, disrupted again with this new
indeed,
platform. So,
indeed.
um, sales drives a business. And so because you help coach and consult on a CRM, what are some tips that you could give to a small business owner that maybe has a small team that's struggling with sales? What are some areas that you think could help them?
So this goes back to something that I teach a sales course every semester at Point Park. And the same thing that I tell my students, which is understand what it is that you're doing that's interesting, different, or unique, and who that appeals to. And I would say most people that are not doing well at sales, that are struggling at sales, are just like little toddlers throwing mud at the wall and seeing what sticks and where it runs down. And so really getting underneath that and saying, what do we do that's different? And if you're a Me Too business, that's okay, right? We've got Lyft and Uber, and they both exist. They're both doing the same thing,
Yeah.
but understanding then what are you competing on? So are you competing on price? Are you competing on product? Knowing really what it is that you're taking to the market that would make somebody interested and make their ears perk up is critical, because we know full well our prospects have done 60% of the work before we ever talk to them. They've looked us up online. They're checking out our Instagram, our Twitter, our threads.
Yeah.
They know so much about us and who we're competing against that we have to also come prepared. So we need to be able to say, hey, we know why what we're doing makes the most sense. And I see a lot of people who resort to negative selling. And I would say, take a good look at what's happening with your sales calls. And instead of saying, we're so much better than competitor X, understand where you can say, like for you to say, ask your business coach if they have a business coach. That's great for you because it leads you into the case where you can say, I have a business coach as a
Yeah.
business coach, right? So being able to put those banana peels out to say, here's why we know we're better without coming out and aggressively negative selling, because that never feels good. That's not something people want to buy.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. And if you don't have a differentiator, I would consider that business to be a commodity because you don't have anything different to sell. So that's
Right.
that's great advice. So what's a you read. So what's a good business book that every small business owner should read?
It is without a doubt 1000% Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Ooh,
Mindset is a book that has changed my life in multiple ways, and I've read it with a different lens every time that I've read it. So I've read it as a business owner, I've read it as a coach, I've read it as a parent, I've read it as a person in a relationship, and every time I read Mindset, I take something different from it. But the basis of it is Carol Dweck is a psychologist, a Stanford psychologist who wrote this book for lay people who are not Stanford psychologists. So
yes.
you can you
Glad you
can
clarified that because it already sounded over my head, but I'll read it
it
now.
does, it does. When you first pick it up, it feels like, whoa, this is for people way smarter than I am.
Yeah.
But she boils it down using stories to tell you people have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, and you're not born with either. You can develop that muscle. So she gives you really good stories of how to immediately put it into play. And instead of telling somebody this outcome was great, good job, you got an A in class, you praise the effort. You worked really hard studying for that test. That's what resulted in you getting an A in that class. And it gives you a really good way to coach your team and your clients to success.
That's beautiful. Darren Hardy. I don't know if you've heard of him. He used to always say everybody comes into this world the same, naked, afraid, and uneducated.
So
And
true.
I that's just like we all have a fighting chance. It's the mindset that holds a lot of us back. So beautiful
Sure.
book. Is that a long read? I know a lot of people want to know that.
It is a quick, rapid read, and you
Okay.
can pick it up and put it down. So you don't have to read it cover to cover. And, she gives little case studies. So you could even just go through and read the things inside of the boxes and get the gist of what you need to do.
Are you a reader or a listener? I know a lot of people ask.
Yes. So I love to listen to podcasts. I listen to podcasts at every chance I can get. But if I'm going to sit down and read, it's always going to be thrillers. I love
Huh.
reading. I love
Okay.
reading scary stories.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So you listen for advice and you read for thrillers.
So true. And it tells you adults learn in so many different ways. And so when you're dealing with your team, you have to have that sort of omni-channel approach, which is, I'll tell you, I'll write it down for you, and I'll record it for you as well.
That's awesome. I find some alignment with every single uh, successful business owner that we've had on this show, and almost every one of them have mentioned in the podcast. I read a lot. I listen to audibles. I listen to podcasts. Like, they're always learning. Would you say that's been critical to your success? Or
1000%. And even beyond learning, I love listening to shows like Hidden Brain and Freakonomics because it gives me something interesting to talk to somebody about if we don't have common ground. So I can say, hey, you know what I heard? And drop something in. And it's always a really good conversation starter.
excellent. Yeah, one of our recent podcast guests, he put it this way. He reads a lot of biographies, and I know for a lot of people, especially business owners, they're like, I don't want to hear somebody else's life. And the way he put it, he said, I want to know about somebody else's life, because if I have a challenge, I want to know how they got through it to get to the next level so I can learn how to get through it. And I thought that was I muddied up what he said, but what he was basing it on was, I want to know what people went through. And one of
Oh,
the books he mentioned was Shoe Dog, the founder of Nike. He was like, that's one of my favorite books. He went through a lot. And then Hangry was another one that he mentioned about Grubhub, I believe. And so those are on
yes.
my list. And now I've got Mindset. Goodness, I know what I'm
Yeah,
doing this
I'll
weekend.
tell you what, there's another genre that I sort of secretly have a guilty pleasure for, and that's failed businesses.
Hmm.
So watching on Netflix the WeWork story, the LuLaRoe story, the Elizabeth Holmes story, sort of being a voyeur to where people went wrong, and it's almost always unbridled ambition, has been
Yeah.
helpful for pattern recognition to say, wow, you really need to take things in small bursts, right? You
Yes.
don't have to run towards that, finish line that is 10,000 miles away. Take it step by step instead.
That's golden advice, because I know a lot of business owners, when I ask them what books they're reading, it's always those hip, hip, hooray, rah, rah, keep going, push forward. And it's like, you can only read so much of that. What you're
Right.
talking about is you're actually learning something that's applicable. I
Right.
think we all know we need to push through. I mean, if you're human, that's what we try to do. So I've read a book enough times to know that I need to push through, keep going. But this other
Right.
stuff you're talking about, failed businesses, I never thought about that. That's awesome, because you could really learn a lot from that. And what were those shows again?
So there is a show on WeWork that's on Netflix. There was a show on LuLaRoe. It was called Lula Rich, which was fascinating.
Hmm.
And then the Elizabeth Holmes Theranos story, which was really, really an interesting psychological dive into the mind of a really wicked smart person who started a business that wasn't quite ready for prime time.
Well, aren't we all? We all want to be bigger than we really are. Like you said, you
True.
mentioned it before. It's like not knowing specifically what your target audience is. You can't be everything to everybody. So that's
Right.
all good stuff. You've been so full of information. We're almost out of time here. So are there any last tips for small business owners?
I think the tip that I would give is the same thing that people told me when I became a parent, which is the days are long, but the years are short, and that's okay. Enjoy the ride, even the things that are challenging, because that's where you learn.
Excellent advice. I know there are some listeners that probably want to follow you or get in touch with you. How can someone do that?
Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I, like you, am very active on there. I love LinkedIn. It's one of my favorite places to learn. So it's under Shannon J. Gregg. I also have my company website, cloudadoption.solutions, and my personal website, shannongregg.com.
Excellent. All right. Well, you've been a fantastic guest today with lots of information that's going to help lots of small business owners. And I appreciate your time. And we will see you over on LinkedIn.
Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.
Welcome to the recap and the Coach's Corner, where I give free business
advice for small business owners to help them grow their business faster. Today on the recap, Shannon brought up a very valid point. I just met with a business owner this morning before our podcast who had not taken a vacation, a week-long vacation, in over 30 years. He just took his first one. What he realized was his team, his business can thrive without him there. Many of us as business owners, we are the bottleneck. Shannon made reference to this when she had her health issue, her scare, when she was not in the office as often as she was, and it allowed her team to shine. And a lot of them were waiting for that moment. And since then, talking to Shannon, things are going so much better. She gave up control. She's letting her team execute and do things that she would have never let them do. So think about taking some time off from your business, whether that just be one day a month, one day a quarter, then move that to 2 days, 5 days, and then even a week, like the business owner I just shared. In regards to the Coach's Corner, sales is the lifeblood of every small business. Without sales, you don't have cash, and you've got to have cash to survive. Sales are so important, and when I work with small business owners, I ask them, let's look at your CRM. Most small businesses will not even have a CRM set up. They don't understand the value of it. It takes too much time. But I know working with businesses, you're missing out on missed opportunities. There are, like we mentioned in the podcast, there are clients or prospects that said, call me back. We're going on vacation. Call me back at the end of the month. And yes, sometimes they're just putting you off. They're not being honest by telling you no, they're not interested. But there are some legit. There are some clients that we have in our CRM that we haven't talked to for 2+ years. And just last week, we had someone sign up for one of our classes that we talked to 2 years ago. We kept notes. We knew everything about this person. We kept them on a drip campaign. They never unsubscribed. They never did answer our emails or our reaches when we would call them. They never did. And just one day out of the blue, they sent an email saying, hey, you may or may not remember me. I was a little embarrassed to reach out to you. I know you've been trying to stay in contact with us, but we're ready to move. Without a CRM, we would have never been able to have or remember that information. So your action item today is go find a CRM, something simple like what she mentioned in the show. We'll have those in the show notes, or download Streak, the free version. That works for me on our one-on-one clients. We have more robust for our bulk prospecting efforts, but go find a CRM. If you already have a CRM, we find this with a lot of small business owners. They're not taking full advantage of that CRM, or they're just not using it very well. So go practice, go enhance your skill sets with that CRM, or go find one. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We would be humbled if you would like, share, engage with the podcast. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on all the popular platforms. We look forward to seeing you next time.